You are listening to Extinction Radio. Get the podcast at extinctionradio.net.
Hey there. Welcome to Extinction Radio, episode number 82. It's the 1st of February in 2018. Hard to imagine that we're already a month into 2018, which promises to be one of the most remarkable, if not the most remarkable year in human history. We have a very full show for you today, starting out with Mike Farragon and Jennifer Hines interviewing Hambone, Littletail. And they seem to have entirely too much fun, so I think you can look forward to a good time with them. Also, starting what I hope will become something of a series, where I did an interview with John Qasim, who's, many of you have listened to John's content that he has produced for Extinction Radio for some time now. It was great to find out what makes John tick, why he does what he does, and get to know just a little bit about his colorful past. So hope that's interesting for you. A little bit of Derrick, Jensen, as always, and one of my favorite songs will be after that. I hope you enjoy it as well. This is done by a group called Choir in the States, and they do something that I just fallen in love with. They have people, some of whom are quite talented choir singers, and most of whom are not. And they, in a very short period of time, get people to sing their little hearts out and put a lot of soul into that singing. So I hope that's pleasant for you. I got also Paul Beckwith speaking with Michael Farragon again a little bit later on, and finishing it up with a remarkable poem from Mary Oliver, produced by some folks that call themselves We Are Wildness and Live, Learn, Evolve. And it's possible that you'll be able to follow a thread of some kind through much of the show today. I find myself really drawn to a now far too overused quote attributed to Albert Einstein, that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So I find myself, really landing on that quote time and time again in these days, and perhaps for an ironic reason. I just noticed that my heart breaks when I hear people like Hambone, Littletail sharing about, times being really hard on his heart, that playing this role of being a collapsitarian and a doomsday prophet can really wear on a person. And I know that I relate to that, and I can imagine that many near-term human extinction folks and Extinction Radio folks can relate. And what I'm inclined to do is just do a little bit of shameless promotion for what Carolyn Baker and I talked about back in episode 81, that we're really launching a body of work this year that's intended to be a set of tools to help us all face the coming predicament-laden world with some amount of resilience, some amount of our hearts consciously and beautifully broken open, and that yielding a bit of grace, and inspiring perhaps some to what Andrew Harvey likes to call sacred activism. So you'll get little wafts of that, and probably more in upcoming episode 83. We have even more stuff about activism possibilities there. So enjoy, and I hope that you, if you have been considering contributing content to Extinction Radio in its new video format, or just in audio is fine as well, I hope you will consider sending it on in and Yeah, adding to this parade of beauty and grief and cracking our hearts open together. All right, welcome to Extinction Radio, episode 82.
Recording. We are recording.
We are recording, and that was Jennifer Hines you just heard speaking, because we've been having a little bit of trouble. And you might notice that we have Hambone Littletail here with us on this brand new video, second episode of Extinction Radio. Hello, Hambone!
Hey, Hambone!
I don't believe it. We finally had to get a woman. Two of us, complete Luddite, grown men. We spent, what was it, Mike? An hour and a half. I had two computers. We had Zoom. We had Skype. We didn't give a fuck what it was going to take. And we finally had to get a woman to get us on Zoom. So if anybody's ever wondering how to get on Zoom, call a woman. Get a woman to do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
We are not going to survive the end times without women. Trust me, brother. If the men out there think we're going to be the ones to get us through what's coming, no, you better have an army of women to get you through this mess.
Well, there's been a lot of armies of women recently, hasn't there, Hambone and Jennifer? They've all been marching everywhere, and there seem to be millions of them marching all around the globe. Have you seen anything about that?
I was there in Cedar Key, Florida. Yeah.
Oh, were you?
I was at the march. I was at the march in Cedar Key, Florida.
Oh my goodness! Is that where you are now, Hambone? You're down in Florida somewhere?
Well, I'm in St. Simon's Island right now, but there was a march here in St. Simon's Island too. That's in Georgia. I'm in Georgia right now.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, different people have different perceptions of what marches achieve. And mine is that they achieve very little in this system.
That makes two of us, but I also think Humpty Dumpty Tribe and Extinction Radio combined probably achieve about as much as marches. We're all doing what we can, man, and not a goddamn bit of it's making any fucking difference. But hey, you know, we're not rolling over and sticking our damn feet up in the air like a bunch of dead cockroaches. So even though I understand that what I do for a living makes no more difference than these fucking little women's marches, so what? I'm out there doing it. I'm out there doing it, brother, and I'm glad to see you still down here in the trenches too.
Yeah. Well, I come and go about being down in the trenches, Hambone. I do despair at times about doing the support group, the Near-Term Human Extinction Support Group and Extinction Radio. I do despair at times as to why the fuck am I doing this? But then I realize that what else would I be doing? You know, so, well, I might be enjoying myself or out taking more walks and things, but it seems like some sort of calling or service I've got to do that I can't quite give up. You know, do you feel that, Hambone? Do you feel, you know, you're on some sort of...
I think anyone who's been listening to me in 2018, I mean, right now I am going through this. I am going through a serious soul searching. I'm giving myself till March 1st. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing every day till March 1st. But I admit, brother, this is the most serious, what do you want to call it? I mean, I don't want to sound melodramatic with soul searching or whatever, but I'm losing steam here. It's just this tsunami of shit that is coming down on us on this planet. I'm starting to lose my sense of humor. I really am. I mean, this is the lowest point that I have been in my doomsday prophecy career in 9 years. Right now, you're talking to me at my lowest point.
So sorry to hear it. You know, it is difficult to keep going on this topic, especially, you know, time after time. I mean, Extinction Radio's had its ups and downs, ins and outs, you know, doing and not doing. And it's a difficult topic to keep going at, because it's very depressing. But, you know, we also have to try and have some fun and some humor while we're looking at truth.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of the fine balance line with the whole thing, you know.
Yeah, just tell me something, Jennifer. We're all new to this Zoom thing, and me and Hambone have just had a real run-in with technology, as you said, over the past hour or so, trying to get this thing to work. So you came on board, and it just worked like magic. You know, it's like.
Well, that's because I've spent time in Azkaban. Do not attempt to do magic on this person.
I would never.
I don't know what I was trying to say, but what I was saying is that do our faces come up automatically when we're speaking?
Well, the mode that we're in right now is the speaker view. Let's see, we can do gallery view or speaker view. So
yeah, let's do that. Let's do that and show the viewers what power we have at our hands here.
Oh, there you go. So we're going to go into speaker view.
Three of us? You're going to put all three of us on at once, or?
No, Hambone's on just now. I see Hambone.
So there's two modes we can do. It toggles back and forth.
I totally
there's
lost you.
This view. Do you see the view I've just put us in? It's gallery view.
Oh, you're gone.
Really?
You completely erased it off my computer.
Oh, I didn't erase it off my computer. She became really big for me.
Oh, yeah, Hambone has gone away. Oh, there he is.
I'm gone away. Whatever you did, you obliterated me, which is fine with me. Let me see if I can get back on here. Hold on.
No, don't touch any buttons, Hambone. Don't touch any buttons. Please.
Okay. I think I'm back.
You're back. You've always been
You're
there.
back. I'm looking at your handsome face right now, Mike.
No,
anyway, we're boring our audience. We need to get back to the.
We can also edit, you know, we can edit this thing. It doesn't have to be like from there. We can start the thing like whenever we decide to start it when we're together.
It's already started because editing's a pain in the ass. I'm sorry, audience, for this, but some of you might have been amused by this in some way or other. So what I was trying to say was, is there a button which you can have all three of us, Jennifer? Can you get all
absolutely, right there.
Yeah?
Didn't make any difference to me. It looks all the same that it ever did. But anyway, I want to look at Jennifer anyway. I don't want to look at you. I want to look at the pretty girl.
Flattery will get you everywhere. You can only see me apparently when I'm talking, so I can either talk or not talk. So
you just keep talking, darling. Anyway. So what we were talking about a minute ago before we got distracted, if you guys, it really did help me. I think somebody in response to when I was really down in a hole here a couple of weeks ago sent me this essay by Joe Badgett. I read it for my Sunday Doomsday sermon a couple of weeks ago, and he talks about this quite a bit. And it really did help me get back on track, to get back into the doomosphere. If you don't know the work of Joe Badgett, that's just like the word pageant, but with a B. And I wish I could remember the name of the essay. I read it out. If you go on Humpty Dumpty Tribe and put in Joe Badgett, it will come up. And if you are really getting down depressed in this rabbit hole, it really is an excellent essay to listen to. That brother Joe, if you're not familiar with Joe Badgett, you need to be. He's dead now. Great guy though.
Is there any way you can get that up, Hambone, and read it out?
No, not right now. I know I can't. Well, I mean, I could get it on my. I can go over here on my computer and look it up, but it's on Humpty Dumpty Tribe.
Go on your computer, Hambone, and get that, because I think that.
All right, you two talk about something else for.
Me and Jennifer will just chat.
You two talk about something else for a minute.
Yeah, but
I'll be back at you.
Watch Hambone in his usual pose with his laptop there. So Jen, how you feeling about Extinction Radio and our new format and stuff?
Well, I love our new format. You know, we've had some technical challenges to be sure, but I think this new format is probably more interesting for people. You know, at least it gives them something to look at as well as to listen to. Not that we're all that great to look at. It seems that the people who've gotten involved in Extinction Radio are well, let's say we're not all the spring chickens, but you know, here we are nonetheless. But I think the new video format's going to lend itself to bringing in a lot more interest, a lot more listeners, and I think that, you know, I've been thinking too. I'm still learning about this Zoom video format, but I'm thinking maybe I could do a couple of like mini, you know, methane monsters, just like, you know, 5 to 10 minutes within an interview or something like that. You know, not right now because I'm not prepared, but, you know, go over some of the latest findings, the latest articles, and talk about them. If I can, you know, make up a little PowerPoint or something like that, we could probably do something like that from time to time, you know?
Yeah, that sounds great. And obviously, you know, we could use Hambone stuff anytime we want. So we've got vast amount of material there, and it doesn't mean directly speaking to Hambone, but we can just use his roundups and take
anytime.
Is that fine with you, Hambone?
That's why I put it out there. I want people to share my stuff. I don't even care if you're a climate change denier sharing my stuff, making fun of me. As long as it's getting my, I have nothing to be ashamed of that I've ever said on Humpty Dumpty Try. Okay, here it is.
Right.
Joe Badgett, his essay is titled "The Sucker Bait Called Hope, Making the Best of a Slow Apocalypse." And it was published on Dissident Voice. Now, he died a couple of years. This is actually from 2010, I believe. But anyway, it's an excellent, The Sucker Bait Called Hope. And he's just talking about, you know, why it's good to give up hope. Let me see if I can actually find the essay itself.
Right.
But I read...
Hambone, can you move your laptop to the other side, because we can see your face there, because it's really bright on that side. Move it to the other side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
the
better.
Sucker Bait. Yeah, The Sucker Bait Called Hope, Making the Best of a Slow Apocalypse. It was actually published right after Barack Obama was elected president in 2008. So, but it's a damn good essay, and I encourage everybody to read this.
Right. Well, fire away, Hambone.
What do you want me to do?
I want you to read it.
Okay. Well, just what we were talking about, as he's saying here, to actually grasp catastrophe on this order of magnitude leaves us numb with shock. Nonetheless, there will be a hell of a lot more consuming, this time centered around consumer alternatives such as burning corn in vehicles and going green with Monsanto before our folly is complete. Most people reading this, meaning if you are in the doomosphere already, those few of us down here understand that we can never again be what we once were, a civilization occupying a relative material paradise through a danse macabre of unsustainable growth through resource depletion. Then he talks about how politics is not going to save us. Still, there is choice available, even a superior choice. Accept the truth and act upon it. We can refuse to participate in a dead society gone shopping. That, you know, just start cutting this planet-eating crap out of your life. that in itself can be called embracing the spirit. Now, it will not accomplish shit, but it is nevertheless the right thing to do because it is the only just thing left to do. Too late for sure, but better than remaining a dysfunctional moral cretin. My inner scales tell me so. There you go. And I got a lot of inspiration from those words that, you know, it's not going to make a shit bit of difference, whatever we do. And this was 2008. This was the day that Barack Obama, I mean, poor Joe, lucky Joe Badgett. Can you imagine if Joe Badgett was alive with Don? This was him when Barack Obama was elected, for God's sake. He understood that it's too fucking late to make a goddamn difference. From here on out, we're fucked. We're fucked. Joe Badgett knew this, but at the same time, that is not saying that it's just like this interview I was having with this fellow, Rhett Butler from Manga Bay, saying, I'm never going to lose hope, because when you lose hope, you just roll over. Bullshit. I have lost all fucking hope. And it was the day that I lost all hope that I made the fucking sign, we are so fucked. And I have dedicated my whole life to just to not going down, because not to do what all three of us are doing. It is to be a moral cretin. We have a fucking moral cretin as the leader of the free world, and I'm not going to be put in the same fucking category as that moral cretin. And yeah, so here I sit waving my little fucking cardboard signs around, you know, and it's hell. But I keep doing it. I keep fucking doing it. Anyway, that's my rant. I hope that was. Does it make sense?
Yeah. Every word of it makes sense, and it's very funny as well.
Do like 10 fucking people on this planet hear a word I'm saying? Does anybody on Extinction Radio hear one fucking word that I've been trying to say for 9 years out there? I understand that what I'm doing with my life, that I'm making a goddamn fool of myself, and I'm proud of it. I've got no fucking apologies to make to any one of my friends or my enemies. I am damn proud of myself, what I've been doing with my life for the last 9 years. But you know, I'm getting beaten down. I'm getting fucking beaten down. Anybody down in this rabbit hole is getting beaten down. And all we have is each other. From here on, we got to stick together, brother and sister. We have to stick together because we're all we've got from here on out, us and my little dog.
So
anyway.
So Hambone, after when it comes to March and you maybe give up doing your videos, what are you going to do then?
My choice is to keep doing this or going back, moving to Austin, Texas, going back to work for Keller Williams Real Estate, making $100,000 a year. You know, running around with my lovable, clueless friends. I might actually be able to get something like a girlfriend back in my life. You know, but you know what? When I think about it, I walked away from that. I've already walked away from it, and who am I kidding? I could walk back anytime I want to. Anytime I want to, I can go back to making $100,000 a year. I can go back to living in a beautiful home in one of the most exciting cities on the planet, one of the most vibrant cities on this planet, living in a beautiful home, being surrounded by all kinds of people who I love and who love me. And instead, I keep finding myself sitting at the end of some other dirt road in some beautiful place with my thumb up my ass. And I just keep asking myself, what the fuck are you doing, Hambone? You know?
Well,
but I know that I would have that. What the fuck?
Well, I mean, this has come up just recently on a post on the Near-Term Human Extinction Support Group. Somebody, a good friend, is actually a second cousin of mine, has just come in with exactly the same thing about how he's so depressed, and he's just fed up completely with everything. In fact, he's fed up with humanity, and he cannot stand people anymore. And I think he's at just a really low ebb at the moment. And I think I'll be reading that post out of his on Extinction Radio, because it's a very good post. But it's the depth of depression that this kind of scenario can lead you into. And at the moment, he's really down. Hopefully, he's going to be picking up again. But those depths of depression, because I get into those depths of depression quite a lot, and I say to myself, what the fuck am I doing Extinction Radio? What the fuck use is that? What the fuck use is a support group? You know, a few people going, yeah, you know, it's yeah, we'll support you, whatever, you know, and most of them are American for starters, you know.
Those damn Americans, I swear to God, they're so damn pushy.
Well, yeah, but sorry, Americans, because you'll be watching this. But you know, I set it up in Scotland, and I get like that as well, Hambone. What the fuck am I doing? I just want to say one thing to you, Hambone, that is that we all need backup, and we all need to be liked and feel that we're worthy in some sort of way. And you're not fucking arsehole, Hambone. You're well respected, mate. You know, and people love your videos. So just don't stop that. Don't go back to being some fucking bullshit capitalist and what was it, Las Vegas or whatever. You know, you're well respected. You're not fucking loony at all. I fucking love your stuff, man.
Well, I appreciate it for the few people, you being one of them, who have any clue what I am trying to do with my life. So, sometimes I wonder, my own subscribers, I don't know. I think there's a kernel of about 40 or 50 people who really get what I'm doing, who get my sick, twisted sense of humor. And anyway, it's so I'm just gonna keep on keeping on. And
yeah, and I advise it that you do that, because it gives me something which interests me, and it makes me laugh. And your roundups are so comprehensive. I don't have time to listen to them all, but the ones that I do listen to are just fantastic. They are just fantastic. You know, you just cover so much ground in so little time with humor. And where's Sancho Panza, by the way?
Oh, Sancho Panza! Hello.
There he is. He's in my lap where he always is.
Yeah, you turn your screen down a little bit, Hambone, because we're just getting the bottom of your head there. Yeah, turn it down a wee bit. That's better, man.
So you want to look at Sancho? Do you see me and Sancho, or just Sancho?
Well,
I know why people watch my channel. They just want to see Sancho. They don't want to see me. They want to see my little dog.
Well, it does help, you know. You come as a pair, you know.
We do. We do. He is clearly, you know, I don't even know how many people know who Sancho Panza is. He was Don Quixote's sidekick, and you know, Cervantes, Don Quixote. While Don Quixote was out tilting at windmills and all this shit, you know, Sancho Panza completely oblivious to everything that Don Quixote was trying to do. I mean, it's absolutely, there could not be a better name than Sancho. That's who Sancho Panza is Don Quixote's sidekick. So of course that makes me Don Quixote.
Yeah,
and that would mean you're chasing windmills and all sorts of things like that, right?
Fracking rigs and wind turbines instead of. I'm tilting at 900-foot tall industrial wind turbines off the coast of Scotland, aren't they, Mike?
Yeah, they are. You're talking about the new water-based wind turbine island.
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, totally useless, totally and utterly useless arm of destructive capitalism. Although it's not seen that way, obviously, it's seen as being one of the saviors
Of course it is.
Yeah, and it's just a load of bullshit. And this is where I really like Derrick Jensen on this when he talks about this subject, because it's just an arm. He's got this bit. It was on last week's episode, from activists to lobbyists. And really, the capitalists are just rubbing their hands with glee at renewable energy. Hey, here's somewhere else we can make money and destroy the planet and take its resources, to keep infinite economic growth.
Of course.
Hey, something else. Let's go for that as well, So I have no fucking hope at all. We are so fucked. Now, Jennifer, I want to ask you a question. Jennifer, how are you seeing this? How are you seeing your life? Me and Hambone have been pretty upfront here and saying that we're like, we're at the end of our tether a lot of the time, and we're bloody desperate and we don't know what to fucking do. So what about you, Jennifer?
Well, circumstantially, I'm a little bit more secure, just kind of like on a physical level than you and Hambone. I tell you what, especially the way Hambone lives, I personally could not do it. I've never been a roamer. I'm kind of very home oriented. So a lot of my processing is done internally, but in nice circumstances. I live in a decent house and I have a decent income, which I continue to try and sustain so I can continue this life. So, I guess from a certain standpoint, I'm living a conventional life, but from another standpoint, it's not a conventional life inwardly, because all the while I'm working and trying to solve problems and whatever I do at work, there's this thing in the back of my head that I can't quite get rid of, and that is basically we are so fucked in so many different ways. I keep up on Facebook. I've been very current on keeping up with all the science and the articles and the philosophy. This is a very philosophical time right now, and we see all sorts of things unfolding so quickly. So it is a mental balancing act for me to live in the world kind of a conventional life, but then knowing all the things that are happening in the world. And I guess I have an added benefit. I don't have children, so I guess maybe in a certain way I'm living a more selfish life. That's just kind of circumstantial the way it is. It was a conscious choice not to have children. I know most people do have children, and the people who do have children, it is a very difficult thing to contend with this. In fact, most people don't even really want to talk about it. I did go and to my sister's wedding over the summer, and nobody wanted to hear anything about what I had to say. So I just kind of kept my mouth shut. And it is a depressing thing to say. So, what do you do when you realize that we are going down? Do you talk about it? Do you not talk about it? That's kind of a thing, Mike. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's a difficult one because I've got Andrew Beck, who many people know, who's a great contributor to the support group. I've got Andrew Beck, and he lives near me, although we don't see much of each other. We don't have a little support group on the ground. With the map on the support group has got a lot of little on the ground support groups together, creating a lot of relationships and stuff, which I mentioned last time. But in terms of relating to people on an individual level, it's just a non-starter. It really is a non-starter.
It's not a very good icebreaker.
No, it's not just not a non-starter. It is a finisher. It's a finisher. It's a conversation killer. It's a social suicide. That's why I don't talk about this shit when I go to Austin, Texas. I do not talk about it. I have no interest in trying to convince anybody, any of my real life friends about I wouldn't wish this worldview on Donald Trump. I really wouldn't. I really wouldn't. My worst enemy, I wouldn't inflict this knowledge upon. I don't encourage people to pursue this. the main introductory video to my channel is "Welcome to Humpty Dumpty Tribe. Now get the hell out of here." That's my advice, is to run as quick as you can if you're peeking. If anybody listening to this is just, what are these guys talking about? If you're just peeking down this rabbit hole, get the hell out of here, man. Go down fucking space aliens or chemtrails or whatever. Anything but this one. There's no advantage to you or the planet for going down this rabbit hole. But if you're down it, welcome to the club.
Well, I think then what's happening is we're all kind of down in this rabbit hole together, keeping each other company and kind of reinforcing each other's worldview and understanding. So really, it's kind of a little closed society by definition. Nobody else is going to come down here. So we're just kind of entertaining each other. So this becomes, as we are having right now, sort of an entertainment with each other, you know?
It's our little doomsday clique. I've never been in a clique in my entire life, and so here I am in the little doomsday clique. I guess, is that what we are? Is this a clique?
Lord. I would say a clique, but maybe that's just what we say over here in proper English.
In the South, we've called it a clique.
A clique.
Anyway,
right.
A clique.
Right.
A clique.
But there are people that I do talk to and I do broach the subject with occasionally. I must admit, they don't really go down the rabbit hole as much as we are, but I do broach the subject, and that they may go on to engage a little bit more. Who knows? I don't follow it up. But are you saying, Hambone, that you have nobody in real life that you can talk to about this?
I really don't. I mean, like, even I'm sure my cousin is listening to me right now. Like, I'm here and visiting my cousin. She is not a clueless moron. This Connie, my cousin Connie, is not a clueless moron. But you know, simply because she asked this morning, I finally went off, and I think we might have touched on this in our last interview. And she's a little bit, has her little toe in the stuff that I'm talking about. And she says she doesn't disagree with me so much, but I just got frustrated. And I said, Connie, I said, what we believe, or at least what I believe, and I've said this in other interviews before, is we are witnessing. I just talked about this with Dean recently. What we are witnessing right now, today, as we're having this conversation, the single biggest event in human history since we climbed out of the trees 2 million, whether you call it 2 million years ago, 200,000 years ago, what is unrolling every single day of our lives, it is bigger than the invention of fire. It is bigger than the invention of agriculture. It is bigger than the Industrial Revolution. You take every single war that humans have ever waged against each other, you combine them, and it does not match what is unfolding every single day before our very eyes. And 99.9% of this planet is either completely unaware of it or they're uninterested in the subject. And I think the single biggest event in human history unfolding before our very eyes, I think it's just a pretty interesting subject. And the fact that nobody's talking about it except for a few of us down this rabbit hole is jaw-dropping to me. It's jaw-dropping to me.
It is jaw-dropping. And the other thing is, things are unfolding so quickly. So let's kind of review what's happened this winter, okay? So here we are. We're in late January. It's winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. And again, this winter, the Arctic vortex has split in half, and everybody is saying, oh, well, it's so darn cold here in the US, or it got very, very cold in Siberia as well, And I always say, if it's down here, it's not up there. It's not cold because the Arctic's getting colder and it's like leaking more stuff all over of us. It's cold because the Arctic is hot, and the Arctic got split in half, and the jet stream is running squarely, or was anyway, I don't know if it still is, was running squarely over the North Pole. And it was causing a heat wave in the Arctic, and it was causing an extreme cold wave in the US, Canada, and in Siberia, where it kind of lopped down. So, then you hear disgusting things on TV, like, Trump saying something like, oh, well, give us some more of that global warming when it gets particularly cold. And it's just so asinine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so absolutely stupid that people could think these things and not even take a look at actually what's happening on our planet. So I like to look at things from a globalist point of view and see what's happening with the science. We are moving into this 6th grade extinction event 1,000 times faster than the Permian mass extinction happened. I mean, it is so quick. And, in terms of our human lifetime, we say, oh, we don't see much different, and we're also just saying, well, we're one little data point on a globe. So if I don't feel it, it must not be happening. And that also is kind of a very short-sighted way to think. But in fact, we are moving into this extinction event faster than any extinction event on this planet in the history of Earth. Now, Earth will probably survive just fine after she shakes us off, like she's got a virus and she's going to, basically she's getting a fever now and she's going to shake off this virus, which is the humans. And then we'll see what happens after that. I mean, it really kind of depends. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. It's never really happened before, but it is stunning. Things are changing extremely quickly. You can just see it in the news if you know where to look day by day by day.
Yep. And how many people are paying attention to this? They as you say, they might look at a few little individual data points, but like what I did today, what I do on Tuesdays, I just sit down there and read the damn headlines. It took me 42 minutes today just to go through the Orwellian nightmare headlines, just on an average Tuesday in 2018. Well, this is one day. You multiply that times 365. What my roundup rant today, multiply it times, and that's just what's bubbling up to the mainstream media. Mm-hmm. This is just the shit that's bubbling up to that level of clueless morons. And if the mainstream media, which I say more and more sounds like the Onion every day, if this is what the science pages of the mainstream media look like in January of 2018, what does the real news look like 10 years from now? See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. If there is going to be any news 10 years from now. But there you go. And I don't know what else to do except do what I do and wave my little "We Are So Fucked" sign around.
And look after Sancho Panza and have your, what they call, pina coladas or something?
Margaritas.
Margaritas, yeah. I'm not a drinking man, so I'm not familiar with
oh, God.
types of alcohol. Wow. Yeah. I mean, but, ignorance is bliss. Is it bliss? Is ignorance bliss?
I think that there's a lot of truth to that statement. There is the happiest I have ever been in my life were the years 2000 to 2005, and it wasn't so much that I was ignorant, but the years that I most divorced myself just from the daily news. Are you following me? The years that I disconnected from world events were the happiest 5 years of my life, when I was the most ignorant of what's going on this planet. I can say were the happiest 5 years of my life. And we ask why people choose to remain ignorant. That's the damn reason.
Well, I think they should remain ignorant. If it doesn't really matter what we do or what we think or what we say, then it's a matter of personal choice. But the question is, once you open up your mind to
Yeah,
what
yeah,
is actually happening, you can't really make that choice anymore. That's the damn thing of it. And then there's the obsession factor. I don't know if you guys have this too. You just kind of like, I mean, it's like watching a train wreck. It's like watching some sort of crazy, upheaval, and you can't bear to take your eyes away, and then you kind of get into it. It's kind of morbid when you think about it.
Well, the Southern Rednecks have this thing in the stock car races called the figure eight. I don't know if you know what a figure eight stock, what it is these, you put about 10 fucking juiced up redneck in these souped up stock cars, and you put them out there on a racetrack, but they have an intersection in the middle where they just, I mean, at 150 miles an hour, they literally are coming at each other head on. And everybody in the audience, of course, on one hand, you don't want to see them kill each other, but of course, everybody in there is hoping for you see what that's what the world has become, one big figure eight stock car crash, and just day after day after day, and we're barely missing by 2 inches. We're missing this fatal pileup. But I can clearly see. I mean, it's just like every fucking car in the stock car race is getting ready for a just a barn burner of a pileup, and that's what I feel. That's the adrenaline that we down here in this rabbit hole is the moth to the flame effect. That we don't want to see this crash. But at the same time, it's like we told you
do.
so. Exactly.
That's the problem. I mean, you get addicted to it, and so you don't really want to see it. But then it's kind of like the gladiator games in the Roman Colosseum or something like that. And and then it's like more and more and more. So it's kind of sick in a way. But I focus on all the science and the news and the politics and everything, and you get a little bit addicted to it. It's an adrenaline rush for sure, but at the same time, it's informational and it causes you to process a lot. I don't know. It's a lot of things.
A lot of things. There you go. That sums it up. A lot of things.
Yeah, too many things.
Jesus. Anyway, I don't know where you're supposed to be the ringleader of this, Mike.
Well, I'm just kind of sat here in reflection at what you're saying. I mean, you're saying everything. Where do we go from here in our rabbit hole? I mean, let's see Sancho Panza. That's a start.
There you go.
Yay! And it's kind of past midnight here, so I think I've got a bit of tiredness coming on.
Well, I think it has been I think it has been a fine interview, and I'm sure my poor cousin, she keeps turning the volume of her TV up higher and higher. I've been sent out to the back porch, and it's starting to get kind of cold out here, and I need another margarita. So I'm just going to say I think we should wrap it up here. What else can you say? Smoke them if you got them. We are so fucked.
And once more with feeling, we are so fucked.
Yes, we are. Well, thanks, Hambone. It's not, I suppose, I kind of contacted you about the interview, but not really my thing. So I'll let Jennifer say goodbye.
Well, Hambone, it's lovely to see you again. I saw you for about a week in October after our seminar, and I hope to see you again. You have an open invitation to drop by, and
All right,
stay
it could happen. Be careful what you wish for. Anyone who wishes for Hambone Littletail to show up at their door gets everything they deserve when I do. So
let's not go there. And for me, we've covered quite a lot there, I think, and we talked about the rabbit hole and ignorance, and just how despairing things can be, and lifestyles, and the whole caboodle. So I don't know. Maybe next time, Hambone, what I'd like to do is just for you to do a economic or an ecological roundup. Actually, do one as you normally do, but with maybe me and Jennifer sitting in the background chipping in now and again. Would that be okay with you?
All right. No, I'm always game for that, brother.
I can't see your head, brother. Your head's been chopped off. Maybe that's
People
just
wish. People wish my damn head would be chopped off.
Yeah.
All right, it's been fun, guys. Onward through the fog. Keep up the good fights. We love you guys. Come see me on Humpty Dumpty Tribe. I'm there every day. I'll be back with my climate change meltdown roundup, and it'll be a good one tomorrow. There's a lot of it'll be a fun one. I'm looking forward to my climate change meltdown roundup tomorrow. We're going to be discussing this new article that out in Nature magazine that the worst case scenario can never happen in the 21st century. That I will review that story tomorrow. So y'all come see me on Humpty Dumpty Tribe.
Yeah, and just very briefly, it's Humpty Dumpty Tribe on YouTube. That's Hambone's
YouTube
channel. And what roundups do you do on what days?
Well, tomorrow is my biggest of the week, which is the climate change. Monday is economic. Tuesday is just the end times headlines. Wednesday is climate change. Thursday is my dump the Trumpty hive of Donald Trump taking down the planet roundup. Friday is my ecological meltdown. Saturday is my clueless fucking moron roundup, and Sunday is my doomsday sermon.
Well, you're a busy guy, Hambone.
I am. That fills up my week.
And Sancho Panza fills up the rest of it.
He does. He does.
Okay, so for just now, then you know where to go if you want to see probably the best updates, comprehensive updates you'll find anywhere about all the that Hambone has mentioned. Just go to Humpty Dumpty Tribe and you'll keep yourself the best informed that you could be. So thanks Hambone for being with us tonight for me, today for Jennifer, and vaguely night for you because you're Eastern, Jennifer's Pacific, and I'm in Scotland, and that's why
Well, go to sleep. It's midnight, brother. You look like you need some sleep.
Oh, thanks very much. You know,
we all need some sleep.
I feel like I need some sleep. You know.
Oh, we all need some sleep. Well, anyway, I'm getting out of here.
All right,
love you guys.
Love you too. It's been a pleasure. Good to see you again.
We're all
bye.
Okay, so bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. On Thursday, January 18th, in the now wondrous year of 2018, I have the pleasure of spending some time and speaking with John Qasim, whom I've had the pleasure of meeting as I've been getting to know a few folks who have been contributing for some time to Extinction Radio. And John, it's been just a pleasure to speak with you and to get to know you. And I thought that this could become sort of a regular segment of sorts, that we could have folks who do produce for Extinction Radio tell us a bit about their lives and what got them to this tiny fragment of the human population that is collapse aware and that is really facing full frontal the daunting circumstances of our world, and somehow still living their lives and still being creative and actually still contributing to their families and communities. And I would say you qualify in all those ways. And so I'm very thankful that you're joining me for this brief interview. And Welcome, John Qasim.
Thank you.
I wanted to start out by asking you, what, if you could look back as far as you can in your life, what got you onto this track that you are now so firmly on, of creativity, of your obvious care for the planet, environmental concerns, social justice? What started this?
Well, how far back do you want me to go? I could say as a child, I was always in the garden and always kind of in contact with nature, and my parents were great in that way. They had a big garden, and we went on holidays when we were encouraged to walk and to be outside and doing stuff in nature. So I think I got a good connection with that, and then through my teens, I got quite geeky about certain aspects of nature. So I started collecting insects and killing them and pinning them and putting them on, gluing them to pieces of card and looking at them through a binocular microscope. I also collected skulls, so I was not squeamish at all, and I used to find dead animals when I was out cycling and used to bury them and deflesh the skulls. So I've always had kind of a side of me that was interested in nature, and I'm not at all scared of death or worried about death. It's just kind of part of life as far as I'm concerned. And I kind of I don't know how important it was, whether I'd have turned out any different. But when I was 18, I kind of accidentally had a really big dose of magic mushrooms, and it had a massive impact on how I saw the world. And I tend to pin quite a lot of importance on that, because I kind of fell in love with the planet, and I felt at one with it. I very quickly went vegetarian after that, because during the psychedelic experience, I went and talked to a horse, and I'd never really been next to a big animal before like that. And whilst I was in the land of psychedelia, I was not scared of horses. I just went up and I was, close to it, and my head was touching its head. And I remember that, the smell of it and the feeling that it was a sentient being. So that was a lovely connection with something other than humans. And I felt very much part of the universe. And, I guess that if there are people out there who have tripped, they will go, yes, I know what he's talking about. And there's people who haven't had that experience. They'll go, what on earth? Because it's very difficult to actually put it into words, what the experience is. But it was very life-affirming and incredibly positive, and for me, a very enjoyable experience, and something that left me feeling, just a better person, really. So that was important. And then I got into eco-activism, and all through my 20s, I was involved in different projects to do with reducing the amount of pollution and stuff. And then I went to Africa halfway through my 20s, just briefly, and it had a big impact on me. And I came back and I wanted to do a career, which was green. So I did a science degree that was it's actually environmental health. So I did all sorts of interesting things in that. But that didn't lead to a paid job. What happened is, during my time as a student, I discovered circus skills. And I really got into a type of juggling called devil sticks. And I learnt to ride a unicycle and do balloon animals. And soon I was making a bit of money as a student, as a skint student, making money as an entertainer. So I'm now a children's entertainer, and have been for 24, 25 years now, called Professor Fiddlesticks. And I put on a silly hat, and I'm a kind of silly, clever, daft person who gets paid to go and perform at kids' parties and festivals. So I have a lovely life as an entertainer, and it doesn't take up much time, and it brings in just enough money to make ends meet. And all the rest of my time I spend doing, I love my compost. I'm a semi-professional composter, or compost for the Americans out there. And I get involved in quite a large variety of voluntary groups. So I do a lot of volunteering. So yeah. Oh, yes. Maybe I can tell you about. I tend to take things very personally. So when I got into green issues, it was about how I could live my life with this belief that I was part of the planet and we only had one planet, and I didn't want to cause pollution and I didn't want to harm things. And so I got into living a green lifestyle and recycling and not getting a car and being vegetarian and stuff like that. And that became very much a passion for me. Very much. Well, I mentioned earlier that I'm a bit of a geek, and I suppose I got a bit geeky about being green and a bit focused on that. And this resulted in me being involved in a project called a Carbon Rationing Action Group back in the mid-noughties. And at that time, people were looking at carbon footprints a lot. And I knew my carbon footprint was really low. I'd done lots of calculators. And then a friend of mine in the CRAG, in the Carbon Rationing Action Group, said, John, you ought to enter this competition that Oxfam are running, which they were looking for the person with the lowest carbon footprint. So lots of us submitted our carbon footprint through this website, and I won it. I had the lowest carbon footprint in Britain out of the 100 people that took part. Now, I guess there are plenty of people in the UK who are living lower carbon lives than me. They're not on the internet. They're not filling in Oxfam questionnaires. They're living in a teepee in Happy Valley, or somewhere not doing what I'm doing. But I do have and continue to have a carbon footprint that's probably less than a 1/12 of the UK average. And I enjoyed my prize. That was going around the Palace of Westminster and meeting MPs and going on talking to political think tanks about climate change and how people as individuals can address it and how governments can address it. That was very educational as well. Anyway, I could talk and talk. That's kind of how I've got to where I've got.
Yeah, appreciate it, John. Excuse me. You've drawn us in a really direct line to pretty close to now. And I'm looking at a list of pieces that you've produced for Extinction Radio, and it's an extensive list. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what inspires you to do these pieces. What are you hoping to convey when you submit one of these dozens and dozens of pieces that I'm looking at on this list? What is it that you're looking for when you're putting together what you're putting together for Extinction Radio?
Okay, I would say that I'm somebody who has a lot of hope and a lot of positivity and a lot of optimism. And that remains, even though I'm pretty convinced that the evidence shows that we as a species are stuffed. I'm totally aware that my own life is finite, and as somebody that studied ecology, I'm aware that many species come and go. I used to collect fossils, all stuff that's gone extinct. So I'm not uncomfortable at all at the idea that this naked ape will go extinct sooner or later. So and that had occurred to me before I came across Guy McPherson. And Guy McPherson and his very eloquent and clear way of explaining where we're at and the evidence that he's provided certainly projected me on this path considerably. In fact, I hosted Guy on his European tour. He came to York and he did a really good talk. And I remain somebody that really admires Guy. and his core message that most people aren't aware of the somewhat calamitous times that we're in the beginning of at the moment. Mm-hmm. What inspires me to do the radio stuff? I'm just a chatterbox, and I have, as well as my job as an entertainer, standing up in front of kids and juggling, I am an occasional speaker at public events. So I do the Skeptics in the Pub circuit and Café Scientifique, and I've done a TEDx talk and stuff like that. So I'm quite happy to stand up in front of people and just yabber on about things that to get me. So some of my segments are about insects or food or foraging. Others are about my activism with Frack Free York, or my social justice issues. I'm very interested in, well, I became a feminist when I was about 19, so I'm interested in fairness and equality. And that's what led me into the Green Party. I mean, I can hug a tree or I can stroke a fluffy bunny, but what led me into green politics was social justice, was about fairness. And that included for people not yet born. It felt really unfair that we were doing stuff now that was trashing the planet for people who aren't here to even scream about it, you know. And people will continue to be being born into an ecology which is not going to be great for them. And I feel really torn, because I love babies, but I can no longer be really positive when somebody says, I've got pregnant. I used to click like, and I used to say, congratulations. And I can't do that anymore. I don't feel great about the continuing of the species. I think we need to reduce our numbers, and not being born is the best way to do that. For those of us who are here, we've got to deal with it. And I'm not suggesting we shoot ourselves in the head. We've got to just live as best as we can and be as kind and as generous and as lovely and as positive as possible, because that's what matters.
Yeah. Well, yeah, John, I just got to say, you've been courageous enough to bring up the H word here on Extinction Radio, the hope word, which, you know, for many people in this tiny community is sort of a trigger meaning whatever I'm hearing after that word is being used, I'm not listening to. There can be kind of a stern, judgmental reaction to using that word. I want you to know I appreciate how you use it and how it apparently shows up in your life, you know, and including your creations for Extinction Radio. I'm going to leave it as a surprise what piece I'm going to play, given I'm a relative newcomer to the years of and the many, many episodes of Extinction Radio, including so many pieces from you, John. I will find one, and I will post it just after our interview. I want you to know how much I appreciate all the work that you've done to
thank you.
To help keeping this little community afloat. I think it's an extraordinary community that is more needed than ever. And with the kind of heartfulness that you just expressed of, you know, really, we need to be kind with one another before we're anything else at this point. And so you've expressed that in spades, and I so appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing what 2018 inspires you to create. And I so much appreciate you sharing a bit of your story with us in this little interview. And any final messages for the?
Yeah, I'd like to say to you, Dean, that Extinction Radio means a lot to me, and the way that Mike and team who have come and gone have kept it going is something I'm really passionate about. And I think it's an important niche which people will come across and maybe connect with, or maybe just say, no, don't believe it, you know. But I'm really pleased that you've come on board, because it's good to have somebody new with taking it on with their own energies, and I like this video format. For me, I work well looking at people's faces and being able to see their expressions rather than just hearing their words. It helps me understand when I can see somebody's expressions.
Yeah.
So that for me is a real benefit, and I'm delighted with it. I shall be experimenting with, because I do quite a few interviews. I've interviewed some interesting people for Extinction Radio, and what I shall try and do now is I shall try and do some not face-to-face interviews. Well, I might do that as well with this. We call it Zoom. It's a website where you can chat to people on a video. But also, I've got something else where I might be able to interview people with us next to each other, both looking at the screen. Yeah. I've done that with my interviews just using my computer. I don't have any fancy equipment. I've got just a laptop. And I've interviewed people on the street, and I've interviewed people at the back of a political rally, all sorts of things. And I shall continue to do that and provide possibly some interesting video content as well.
All right. Well, we look forward to it. Thank you so much for all that you're bringing to Extinction Radio, but also obviously to your community, and look forward to seeing what 2018 brings.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, John.
Cheers, Dean. Bye now. Hello, Extinction Radio listeners. This is John Qasim here with my list of things that I appreciate, things I'm grateful for, and things that I celebrate. Firstly, I am very grateful that I got through my difficult teenage years alive, and I'm amazed I've nearly reached 50 years old. I'm very happy that I chose a low-impact, low-carbon lifestyle with my wood stoves, my vegetarianism, my freeganism, and my bicycle. I am very grateful that I met my wife Jill, who loves me unconditionally despite all my quirks and oddities. I am very grateful for my good health, both physical and mental. I am very, very happy with my friends and my lovers. I am in love with the natural world, the wonders and beauty of it, trees and rivers, waves and clouds, insects and fungi and more. I am simply in love with life.
Beneath It All, Cricket Song is one of the most hopeful and beautiful and positive 5-word phrases in the English language. Because beneath the sounds of the interstate, beneath the sounds of the city, beneath the roar of airplane jets, Cricket Song remains. And beneath the pavement, there is still soil and there are still seeds. And beneath it all is still the real world. It's all just waiting, ready for us to listen.
Is there anybody in there? Just not if you
surprise, surprise, you'll probably see sitting on the screen, sipping his coffee or tea or some concoction, Paul Beckwith, the wonderful Paul Beckwith. There we go. What is it, Paul? It's Equator something. Equator what? Coffee?
Equator Coffee Roasters.
Well, there's a lot to be said about the equator these days, Paul. Maybe you can tell us a bit like that later. So, welcome to Extinction Radio, Paul.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
Do you know what that means? But we'll let other people.
Yes, I know what fine means. Something, neurotic is the N, I think, and emotional is the E.
Your memory's failing you, Paul. You know, I don't like this. You're one of our best scientists. Your memory's going. It's fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotionally unstable.
Right.
So I'm kind of in between. I go in and out, as probably you do with your emotions. But
I thought you were a stable genius.
A stable genius.
Yes.
Emotionally unstable genius or stable genius.
No. Are you a stable genius like the Donald?
Oh, right. Yeah, the Donald. Yes. Yeah. No, I think I would put myself in an unstable genius category if he's stable.
Well,
because I'm opposite to whatever the Donald is. So, Paul, delighted to have you on the show, and it's video now. I don't know if you approve of that or not, if you think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Right, but we're keeping the name Extinction Radio because that's what we're known as, and it's a bit of a misnomer in a sense, but hey, we're keeping it anyway. So we've gone video, and I was wondering, well, Happy New Year to you for a start. I hope things are going well this year. And on that note, I was wondering if you could just give us a little summary of how you think 2017 progressed or digressed from in terms of climate change, biodiversity, habitat destruction, the whole caboodle, the Trump or whatever, the Trump. And then give us a look forward to maybe 2018 and your most optimistic and pessimistic views for 2018, mate.
Okay, well, you've covered quite a lot of different things in your question. Are you going to be talking again in this interview, or do I get an hour to elaborate on this question?
Well, if I get bored or something I want to comment on something, Paul, I will interject.
Oh yes, I know you will. So
right. Let's yeah.
Yeah. So we're getting time compression here, right? I used to play a lot of duplicate bridge, and you bid and you try to make tricks, and if you mess up and you don't get as many tricks, my friend used to call it trick compression. He's trying to get 9 tricks and he gets 6 or 7, so trick compression. So we're getting time compression, right? You can take all of the climate projections about, things are going to get pretty bad somewhere down the line in the future. It used to be 2100, and then it's 2070 and 2050, and lo and behold, all this stuff is happening right now in front of our very eyes. We're very privileged to be on this planet as we see things falling apart completely. So, I think, the hurricanes that went through the Caribbean are in a lot of people's minds, especially if you lived or visited any of those islands at any time. Puerto Rico, look at that. How long ago was that now? 3 months ago, we still have over 1 million people without power. We have many, many people without potable water. They have to travel far distances to get drinking water. I mean, imagine, people complain when the power goes off for a day or even a few hours. If it's in a big major city, it's crazy. So, this is happening there. So we're seeing abrupt climate change proceeding, and we're seeing weaker countries, maybe random countries, wherever the storms happen to hit. Like I've talked about the climate casino. So if you're in a region that gets hit, your city gets submerged or hit by, some event, and it's costing more and more to recover from these things. a report just came out today summarizing Hurricane Harvey, I guess, and the damages from Harvey have only been exceeded by Katrina in the past. So the costs in you know, they're like 370 billion for 2017. So 2018, we're already starting off with things like this happening. You know, one of the things recently is Cape Town, 3.7 million people. Basically, day zero is when the taps no longer supply water. That's being moved up to April 12th. It was the 21st. Just drought going, you know, the worst drought they've had in a couple, 100 years, maybe 300 years. And they're building desalination plants like crazy, 3 or 4 of them. They're all behind schedule. Basically, the population is restricted, I think, to 87 liters per person, and that's going to be enforced to 50 liters. But most people aren't abiding by that. It's voluntary. There's a lot of water hoarding going on. So stuff is happening around the world in different locations. It's really bad stuff due to climate change, and we're just going to see more and more and more of it. It's not like the whole system collapses overnight. You know, it's not like it's a progression where you know, you lose in the climate casino, or your country that doesn't have enough resources to repair what the damage is. So
right. So you think then, Paul, that there's no real chance of a 50 gigaton burp of methane coming up, and it all being pretty quick?
Well, that is a risk, and that is a risk that is getting higher and higher. So the way I see this playing out in the next few years is I fully expect to have a blue ocean event, you know, within the next 5 years, maybe even in the next 3 years by 2020. If it happens, say, in 2020, you know, no sea ice for a couple of weeks at the end of the melt season in September in the Arctic, you know, we're saying no sea ice, maybe a little bit around the edges. We see the seasons. I'll be doing an extensive video on the Arctic, probably filming it later today, actually, and posting it in a day or two, probably tomorrow. I see when that happens, within a few years, probably no sea ice extended out for a few months, so maybe August, September, October, and then, you know, within a few more years, add another month, no sea ice for July, August, September, October, November, and then, you know, we're heading really to no sea ice year round. And then what happens? Well, the Arctic warms like crazy. There's no longer a cold pole, really. Where's the coldness going to be? It's going to be over Greenland, right? Greenland, high altitude, still lots of ice, lots of reflection. That'll be the colder area. So essentially, we're going to get a shift, right? The cold Arctic will no longer be the Arctic over the Arctic Ocean, over the North Pole. The cold Arctic will be over Greenland. So that obviously will shift the entire circulation patterns. It'll affect the Rossby way, the jet streams, of course. It'll act like, you know, the poles will be Antarctica, and over Greenland, some people call the third pole over the Tibetan Plateau. And then what will happen is Greenland ice melt rates greatly accelerate and Greenland darkens, then we'll lose even the Greenland part of the pole. Of course, sea levels will skyrocket. And, you know, we're basically rewiring the way heat is transported on the planet. We're rewiring the atmospheric circulation systems. We're rewiring the ocean circulation systems. And this will change weather everywhere on the planet, not just in the Northern Hemisphere. And of course, so water, I've already talked about, is a key issue. We need water. It's already, you know, we're getting huge droughts in all kinds of different areas. Cape Town is just the latest. You know, we've had droughts in Syria, which caused mass migration, droughts in California, droughts in Yemen. Look what's happening there now, all over. And they're hitting new areas. We're going to have a much different world. We've still got to grow food, right? So we're near the equator. Once we get the poles, the ice gone mostly, then all that heat goes into not melting ice, right? Where you melt ice, the temperature stays at 0. You heat up seawater, there's no ice. All that heat goes up into heating up the water and heating up the atmosphere. regions around the pole, the equator, are going to get so hot that they reach wet bulb temperature, and people are going to have to migrate away from the equator because you won't be able to be outside and survive.
Right. Yeah, it's well, everything you said is pretty worrying, Paul.
You can't worry. What does worrying do? Right?
Sorry.
What does worrying do?
What does worrying do? Yeah, well, it is kind of worrying if you've got kids, and you know what I mean, mate. You know.
No, I know, but you know, it's yeah. I mean, don't worry, because at that point, governments around the world, they'll say, "Hey, this Beckwith has called this all along," right? They'll let me get my grubby hands on those switches, right, to turn on those machines to suck CO2.
Yes, I saw your little fancy water vapor machine.
And to turn on those machines to cool the planet and restore stability to the
planet. But I wanted to ask you something, Paul.
And we all live happily ever after, right? So
yeah,
don't worry.
Okay, but you said that we'll have an Arctic, year-long Arctic free ice, and then the cold will move down to Greenland, and eventually, Greenland will, will lose its ice, the seas will rise and stuff. Is this meaning that I'm going to get really cold here in Scotland, and you're going to get pretty cold in Canada for a while? And it's going to keep. How far south is this going to go?
Well, see, we've got a lot of factors here, and we're learning more and more about these different factors, but we're never going to learn everything. There'll always be the surprises, lots of surprises. I mean, the unknown unknowns and the unknown knowns and known unknowns and all this stuff from, what was this, Rumsfeld stuff? Cheney, Rumsfeld stuff. Cheney hasn't had a heartbeat since 2010. Did you know that?
He hasn't had a heartbeat.
Like he when you get an artificial heart,
of course,
artificial hearts were pulsing, so you had a beat. But now they just pump blood continuously, so you don't actually have a pulse when you have an artificial heart now. I didn't know that. I just read it on The Economist. Sorry, it's a bit off track, but. Anyway,
it's a bit off track, but maybe the same will apply to the Earth, soon before we know it,
But don't cut it out, man. It's important. It's important to know. I read it in The Economist just yesterday. This latest Economist. So the point about the point is okay. A number of different things we know are going to happen for sure. We don't know the exact timing, and so we know that when we lose the Arctic sea ice, it's going to really affect the zones of the ocean up in the high Arctic, where the seawater, the Gulf Stream, comes across, moves up towards the north, cools down. That very salty, cold water then is much heavier than the fresh water from the ice melt, so it sinks down, and we get this global ocean circulation. So what we know is that the Gulf Stream location will shift, and the water won't cool down as much as it's going to the north. Because we've got this fresh water cap on the surface, which is colder, so it'll disrupt the descent. And we're talking about the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Ocean Circulation, shutting off or redistributing. Instead of going so far north, we might get this water descent further south. So what this will do, you'll get colder in Scotland. You'll get colder in Europe, and it can happen quickly if the AMOC shuts quickly. We'll also get a bit colder on the east coast of Canada. And then this thing will be rewired, the heat process has changed. But then as we continue to get a much hotter northern hemisphere overall, much less temperature difference between the equator areas and the pole, the Arctic's going to warm like crazy. I mean, we know in the past the Arctic didn't drop below zero, for example, in the high Arctic, because things that would die if it dropped below zero survive. We have the fossil record showing they're there, so we can get that sort of thing. So I guess the point is, at what point with all this warming do we get release of methane? I mean, we're going to get a continuous release increasing over time from the permafrost that's on the land. Okay, as temperature rises, then we'll get a correspondingly increase of methane from there. Now, the methane that's in the clathrates or hydrates on the seafloor, those will come out more episodically as bursts. Will we get a ramping up and And 50 gigatons was in the study by that Peter Wadhams was involved in. Will it come out? I think they modeled two things. They looked at a 50 gigaton burst in a year and modeled it out 10 years, or they looked at a 5 gigaton release per year over 10 years and looked at the warming in both cases. So, that the risk of that is higher and higher, and that will complete the process, if you like, of bringing us to a totally, warmer Arctic, probably permanently. Now, this is the ghost of Christmas future talking to you, right? The ghost of climate future talking to you, right? It's not set in stone that these things will happen, right? If we continue on our path of stupidity, then these things will happen. But humans are the biggest feedback in the entire system, right? If we get off our butts and get concerned about this and say we have a climate emergency, we really don't want this to happen because we built civilization for the climate that we have now, we haven't designed it for massive changes, then I think we have a good shot at having a different future, right? As happened with as happened with Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol, that timeless classic. He saw the visions from the ghost of Christmas future, the ghost of climate future. If enough people see that, then we can change what we do, take emergency action, and have a different future.
So when the shit hits the fan, Paul, and the politicians and the funders and the general public and everybody accepts that the shit has seriously hit the fan, I take it what you plan to have in place right there then is something which is scalable, upable in terms of carbon capture, and geoengineering is ready to put in place immediately. Is that right?
Well, there are things that we can do very, very rapidly to cool the planet, right? We know they work. There's a lot of moral discussions on, do we want to do it and stuff, but those discussions invariably don't consider the risks of not doing it. They just consider saying, oh, if we do it, maybe we'll cause a drought somewhere, or maybe some country will complain, or maybe this will happen or that'll happen. Well, if we don't do it, and we may lose our food supply and our water supply and have, huge parts of the population culled, just dying off, not enough food grown, not enough water, etc. Huge, we're talking, huge percentages of the population. So the risks of doing nothing are not really tenable. And the problem is we're just waiting so damn long that the system seems to be destabilizing so quickly. We're just losing control, maybe losing the capability of doing very much at all, except for these, very radical, very intense things. Like, for example, like if the system destabilizes, we start getting some more methane coming up and temperature jumps a degree. In the last 3 years, temperature's gone up 0.24 degrees, which is phenomenal rate of change of increase in temperature. There was a strong El Nino year, but still, after other El Ninos, the temperature normally drops off a bit more, and it's not doing that anymore. We're losing the thread. Politicians fool themselves. Policymakers fool themselves. They have no idea, how bad things are. And I just, even scientists. The scientists don't either. I was just at the AGU conference, 24,000 scientists. I walk around, hey, this is a neat poster. Wow, this is happening. There's no sense of urgency yet amongst those people. So it means they just don't understand how bad it is.
Yeah, I saw your video, Paul, where you're at that conference wandering about, and you're looking for something specifically. I think it was Arctic or something you were looking for. I'm not quite sure. But I did see your video, and I recommend everybody go and watch Paul's videos on YouTube, Paul Beckwith's channel on YouTube, because he's got some fantastically educational videos up there on YouTube. I saw that video, but I'd say on a scale of, let's just say 1 to 10, Paul, how hopeful are you that when the shit hits the fan, that there will be something in place to capture what a lot of people are saying is just a ridiculous amount of carbon that we have to capture from the air, and it's totally unscalable. You know, you cannot scale it up. So, what is your hope from what?
Okay, so yeah, so it's gonna the only thing that is really scalable for capturing carbon that I see is a massive. You know, we're landlubbers. We just think of doing stuff on land. I mean, the IPCC, they assume for the RCP, representative concentration pathway 2.6, which is like the lowest emission scenario, that we capture carbon on land using something called bioenergy, carbon capture and storage, BECCS, BECCS. That's, forget it. We don't have enough land to do that. We'd be displacing crop growth. Notice they never talk about population growth. But anyway, that aside, we got to use the oceans, man. I mean, the oceans absorb loads of carbon. We just have to make them absorb loads more. So we can capture huge amounts of carbon very quickly in the ocean, no problem at all. You know, we just need to provide the ocean with the nutrients that are missing in order to stimulate phytoplankton growth, and then the entire food chain in the oceans will proliferate. So, you know, the oceans are basically a desert for phytoplankton. It's only near the shores where there's upwelling, where there's nutrients, that we get huge growth. But we can actually turn the desert areas of the ocean into phytoplankton blooms. And, you know, we have ships transporting goods all across the ocean. Okay, all we do is have these ships release slowly on their path around the ocean, their normal routes, some nutrients to support phytoplankton growth, and that will suck huge amounts of carbon from the atmosphere. But you know what? It's gonna, I mean, a drought, you know, that causes global shortages of drinking water, or crop failure, that's gonna happen in a season, right? And spread for a couple of years. So, you know, we can quickly start pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and the oceans, but it's still going to take some time. So this is why we need to, you know, we just need to retrofit some of these big, huge aircraft, fueling tankers with materials to, you know, put a little reflective canopy up in the stratosphere to cool the planet at about 1 degree or half a degree. You know, we can tailor it. We can start putting stuff in the stratosphere, cool 0.2 degrees, 0.5 degrees, you know, 0.8 degree, 1 degree, bring us back down to the sort of level of temperature that we're used to, and that will allow us to deploy these systems to suck carbon out of the atmosphere. So,
right, Paul.
I'm just saying, you know, talk about the ethics, talk about whatever you want, but
yeah,
these things, my crystal ball is telling me that all these things are going to happen. You know, you talk all you want. You know, we're just not doing anything now. We're heading to this, and that's how it's going to play out. You know, how many years it takes, that depends on how quickly the sea ice goes. Depends on how much methane comes up. All these other things happen. So there you go.
You're breaking up a little bit, Paul. Can you move slightly closer to the microphone?
There you go.
Hello. Sorry, viewers, if something funny happened there for a few seconds. We had a little technical difficulty, as I imagine Paul might have with some of his ideas. But that's I shouldn't really be saying that, Paul, because I really don't want to have an argument with you about this.
No, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, where are you going to get these nutrients from for spreading around the ocean? That's my first question for you.
Yeah. Where am I going to get the nutrients from? They're in the soils, right? For one thing. So you could just grab a handful of dirt and just chuck it over on the ocean, right? And all the nutrients will come out of the dirt, but you might lose all your soil, so this could be a problem, maybe not the best solution. I highly recommend a book by this gentleman by the name of Joe Quirk. That's his real name. It's not
Could you spell that?
Quirk, Q-U-I-R-K.
Quirk.
Quirk. Yeah,
Right.
the book is called Seasteading. C-S-E-A steading, as opposed to homesteading you do on the land. Seasteading you do on the ocean. And you get the nutrients are things just simple like iron, for example. You know, little like iron powder. Right, there's stuff that's plentiful. You know, you go to you some of the you take some of the iron from an iron mine and you just grind it up into very small particles, and you just you can embed them in something that floats. That's the best way of doing it, because then it floats around, and over time some of the iron's released over the space of a year or two. Like embed corn husks is one idea, or something, some bio feed thing that we don't use right now, and these things would float around the ocean, slowly releasing nutrients, causing phytoplankton blooms everywhere. There's other things too, but you know, again, this isn't rocket science, right? And should humans do this? Well, you know, we've messed up the atmosphere and ocean chemistry for 150 years. You know, if we try to do something to restore what it was like before, you know, I mean, think if we restored the biomass, the fish and the plants in the ocean to what they were like 150 years ago. You know, there were certain areas where you could almost walk on top of the water. There were so many fish swimming in the water, right? That's how islanders described it in some of the regions where there was upwelling. They said, hey, you could really, like, literally, you look at the ocean and you see these fish are like swimming up, and you see the water sort of shimmering, and it's just laden with biomass. And think of all the carbon that would be in that alone, right? So
that sounds like a paradise scenario to me, Paul. Which, you know.
Oh yeah. I mean, do it.
I wish you all the best with me. I really do. But you know, as I say, I'm not wanting to. I just want to get you involved here in what you believe, and let the listeners make up their own minds. So I don't really want to get into that back and forth scenario. Does Peter Wadhams go along with this? With the filling the oceans with iron particles?
He's more. There's a guy, Seb Clark, in Australia, who's an inventor. And he's working with a guy, a teacher in the UK by the name of Kevin Lister. There's a group called Envisionation, with the website Envisionation. And those are some of the ideas, you know, of ways of seeding the ocean with nutrients. There's also ideas on creating, brightening low-level clouds over the ocean, marine cloud brightening. There's also ideas on restoring ice in the Arctic Ocean so that we have a white reflective surface instead of, you know, open ocean that's very dark. There's ideas on that. There's also a group called the Healthy Climate Alliance that is working on a lot of these different ideas. There's also a group I met at the AGU conference, this mostly, where is it? Cambridge or Harvard? Harvard, I think. A group 911ice.org or something, like it's emergency, you know, 911, 911, but 911org.ice, something like that. And they have these different ideas for thickening ice. You know, there's about a dozen companies that are looking at direct air capture to, like, basically making machines that suck CO2 out of the atmosphere. You know, I think trees work better personally, but you know, the problem is that our climate is warming and changing so much that we're getting drying and you know, stress on trees, and then we're getting these massive wildfires, and they're going further and further up north. We've even seen some wildfires, some of the tundra burning in Greenland. You know, just look on Earth Null School, just Google that and click on chemistry, you know, and look at things like SO2X, the NOx's, and see, and go around. You can see where the big cities are spewing out crap. You can see look in the far north, and you can see hotspots, which are from burning fires, etc. And the problem is we're losing our carbon sinks on the planet rapidly. The forests.
And Paul, if I may interject just for a second, what happens if there's obviously a whole scenario of things here which are being investigated at the moment. But what happens should civilization have a big financial collapse, and then civilization starts to collapse all over the place, and we get our global dimming coming back down on us. What do you think about that, mate? That scenario?
Yeah, well, that's not very good, right?
No.
What happens is well, first of all, generally, I'm arguing that that most of the collapses are they're processes, right? They're not instant. So weaker countries have financial collapse, and then right, it doesn't happen simultaneously around the world. Where like Puerto Rico is already hit, that's part of the U.S. and they're just not rebuilding it. Maybe if the hurricane season's bad again and it goes through and destroys all of the destroyed buildings and little feeble infrastructure that they managed to build in the intervening year, it's just like people won't live there, right? People will.
Okay, but so, we're talking about it being a process, right?
A process. So
process.
I guess
what if, Paul? What if the Chinese economy or the American economy totally collapses? Let's talk about a big economy here.
Well, we came close to that. We came close to a complete collapse a few years back, right? 2008, 2009. Then people will. There'll be a lot less world trade. There'll be a lot more, local stuff, local food growing, local communities getting together saying, hey, we're scared, we're really scared. We got to do something here and try to survive. So people learning skills and, consumerism would stop, right? And this is a good thing. We don't need all new stuff all the time. It would, the internet maybe would stop working. That would do in half the population probably. How are they going to survive without?
I'm wondering that myself. But
right, so
we're talking about that, Paul. But my main question really did not focus on like suddenly people being able to grow their own food and stuff on a large scale at local level. Really what it concentrated on was if there was a big financial collapse and a big civilization collapse which affected a lot of the world very quickly, how would that then, the lack of global dimming, affect the planet, and how quickly?
So a collapse, first, so I'll directly answer your question. So a collapse of financial systems globally will devastate the rich Western countries because they won't be able to deal. Will it devastate a place like Cuba? No, right? They've had sanctions, they have power interruptions, they've become much more self-sufficient. So we're in deep trouble, but there are places, there are islands that are much more resilient. There's poor countries that they've been used to hardships like this their entire life. Nothing changes too much for them. Okay, so that's one thing. So the collapse will affect countries disproportionately, and we're at the worst end of the stick, being in developed, so-called advanced countries. Now, as far as global dimming goes, there was a paper recently, which I should cover in a video and haven't yet, and it looked at, what is the number of global dimming? Is it half a degree? Is it a degree? Is it 2 degrees? Is it 4 degrees? And the number is in the range up to about a degree or so. So maybe half a degree to a full degree that's the best scientific view right now on that. Something like that we can correct that will happen very, very quickly, right? Right when the collapse occurs. We can actually correct for that rise of temperature, half a degree to a degree, with a well-known amount of sulfur in the stratosphere.
Right.
Okay? Because the volcano puts X amount of sulfur in the stratosphere, cools the planet for 3 years, maybe half a degree or 3/4 of a degree or a degree, depends on how much we put up. And we can just figure out how much to put up there and correct for that through that
Right.
method. Not ideal, but it would be done to preserve our access to food and water.
Right. And I take it you're talking about putting this up into the whole atmosphere of the whole world.
Yeah,
Are you?
that's right. Sure.
Yeah. You know, is it? Do you see any negative effects of this affecting one country more than another country, or is it just going to be a straightforward process? You know, could it affect one country in a really bad way, like, you know, or are there too many unknowns here that we really don't know if this technology is going to work?
See, one of the problems is that it's very difficult to gauge. We can't do experiments on the planet, right? We can't say, okay, we've got a parallel planet. On one planet, we do nothing, and we watch the food supply and water supply collapse and mass starvation and wars everywhere and total chaos. You know, on another planet, okay, so industry collapses with the financial collapse, and we put the sulfur in, and most of the planet is okay. We get by, but some countries get devastated, right? Of course, those countries will blame everything on the sulfur, even though they would have been devastated even worse or more without any sulfur going into the atmosphere, right? The problem is, like, this is a problem with vaccines, right? For flu. Lots of people take vaccines for flu each year. And if you don't get flu, okay, well, great. I mean, did it have anything to do with the vaccine? Maybe not, maybe it did. But one thing's for sure, if you take the vaccine and it doesn't cover the type of strain, flu is mutating so quickly, and you get flu, you'll say this vaccine is useless, right? It's always all or nothing. Things are always more complicated than this. I mean, is it worth taking the flu vaccine? Well, in 1918 in Kansas, okay, the H1N1 flu virus appeared. By winter of 1919, a third of the entire global population had the flu, and 50 million people were dead. Okay, this virus mutates, and there were some outbreaks since then. You know, in various years, 3 or 4 years were very bad. You know, and they were all related to the H1N1 strain in 1918, but they didn't kill people as much. Maybe people were a bit healthier. So if this sort of thing happens again, you know, we have vaccines that can keep us healthier and safer. But you know, they're working on vaccines that are where you get it maybe once every 5 or 10 years. Or what if you have a vaccine that you give to a kid and it protects them from the flu for their life, right? The point is, you know, after time, you might say, well, we don't need the vaccine because we never, like, when a technology is successful, people don't care about it, they don't think about it, it works, they're all happy, they forget about it. You know, it's when the really bad stuff happens that you look for ways to solutions. So this is always a problem with technology, right? If we go and, you know, the world's falling apart, we have a financial collapse, we have a global dimming, we put sulfur up, corrects for the temperature, everything hums along again, right? Then we say, well, you know, like we forget about the stuff. We forget about how dire it is. We forget that maybe we would have all gone under completely without doing anything. I mean, it's just the way humans are, right? It's the way our mind works.
Right. Yeah. But we are talking in this instance of, like, I think, as you've mentioned before, every country, if you go for carbon capture, and possibly you need agreements from every country.
So see,
you know,
that's the thing. I don't think that's gonna happen, really. I think what's gonna happen is the rich and powerful countries will. I mean, you just need some billionaire to say, heck, you know, let's just go and do this, right? And they'll just go and do it. Who's going to stop them right now? Or you say that maybe the situation globally will get so serious that all countries are panicking, so we give more power to a sort of a body which does the best they can for the world, right? And they say, well, this is what we're going to do, and they do it. And you tend to lose choice, and you lose democracy, and you lose all these things in times of great stress on country. So this is one of the problems that is happening right now. Democracy is on its way out. So imagine if we had a Trump-like character who was scared completely of climate change, taking out, make the world great again, right? Recognizes all of these things, and what's to stop them from deploying it? So the anti-Trump, might be trying to cool the planet right now.
Right. Well, yeah.
Right. So we're going to say the planet revolves around one guy right now, right?
Right. There might be, but for me, the fossil fuel companies and there seem to be a lot of new drilling expeditions going on. There's new lack of subsidies. Subsidies are being withdrawn for solar, for instance. I don't believe that renewables are scalable up.
Yeah,
anyway.
Well, but we know who runs the world right now, right?
I'm not sure. I'm sure Putin's got something to do with it. But anyway, let's and China as well. But let's. I just want to move tack slightly here, to methane. And there's a report that that's been up and been talked about recently. There's a small bunch of scientists that said, you don't have to worry about this methane. This methane is all going to get eaten by bacteria. Well, what do you think about that one, Paul? Have you seen that report?
Yeah, I have, and it's similar to a report I did a few videos on, I guess a while back.
Yeah.
The problem is are you talking about methane from these seafloor sediments? Or you're right, I think you are.
I think I might be. I'm not 100% sure, Paul, but it's a small group of scientists, somewhere in Alaska.
Right. So you're talking about that group, and they're saying, there's enough microbes and things in these sediments that they'll decompose all the methane. The problem, this is happening if methane is leaking out slowly and stuff, but we know that doesn't happen everywhere, and that one of these things, the ideas of these methane bursts, is you've got to get a huge amount of methane released from the melted ice cages that surround the methane. You get the expansion of 160 times in volume. There's cracks. We know that the Earth isn't completely uniform, and it's not just a diffusion thing. The methane can find a path up from deep in the sediments to the ocean water, and it completely saturates all of the microbes and stuff that are there. It's just coming out too fast and furious that it just saturates everything that might destroy it, and that takes out the initial part of the methane that comes up, and then the rest of it just comes up, and there's nothing left to remove it, and you get a big pulse of methane. So I don't know, what those scientists are smoking, quite honestly. Like seriously, are they Canadian? Are they in a place where pot's being legalized already or something? Or what are they been drinking? Or science. One of the things is it's usually very. Science is a progression, an iterative process. You learn something, it's published, bit more. Everything there is pointing out to methane is a huge problem. You get a few people saying, hey, now methane isn't. Now, we're not saying that they're wrong, but lots more studies will be done, and then they'll either throw this stuff out, there was a flaw in their reporting, or we go back to this path if it's a huge problem, or they made some sort of breakthrough, found something that nobody else recognized. But it's in all likelihood, we're going to get a large methane pulses.
At times
you can feel better and believe that study if you want, but it's not.
Really. It's just some kind of rogue study, you think, to take the emphasis off what is really happening, because Peter Wadhams has been through. He's seen he's seen funnels of methane. You know, you got the Shakova and Samelatop, where it's got lots of evidence that it's coming up.
Yes,
You know?
he has. I mean, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm going to try to travel a bit more this year. So I'm doing, you know, I tried to raise some money with my donate button, and it was successful to go to pay for most of my trip, not all of it, to
Excellent.
the AGU in New Orleans. This year, there's lots of conferences going on, and you know, one of the things I'd like to do is find a decent conference in London, England, and go out there and, you know, meet Kevin Lister and meet Peter Wadhams and
hey, you could even meet me, Paul.
Talk to people, you know, some of the AMEG colleagues that I've been working with for 5 or 6 years, but have never met in person.
So you're not planning to meet me, Paul?
And, well, I could come out to
hey, we could go
my
Finkel's
mom is
Cave.
from, if you're near Bonnie Bridge, I could probably swing by.
I'm near Bonnie Bridge.
My mom's from Bonnie Bridge, which nobody has heard of. You know, probably like 20 people, a little town in the Scottish.
Yeah, well, we've all heard of it, and it's quite near me, and I've got a spare bedroom, so we could actually, you know, you could come up here and we could have a real go at each other.
Yeah, we can do a live session.
Yes,
right?
that would actually be wonderful. The second thing I wanted to bring up was about permafrost melting, and there have been a report I read today about, you know, there's no need to worry about old viruses coming back up, and anthrax, that was going to come up anyway, and that happens, and, you know, there's no need to worry about all these things because all these things are dead, and there are scientists who've taken, you know, bits of dead bodies and bits of dead animals and gone to the labs with them and tried to put them in the Petri dishes and whatever, and tried to, you know, what's the word I'm looking for?
Try to get them to, revive them, have them multiply.
To grow, to multiply, Do you think that is probably the case, Paul, or do we have a worry here with the permafrost melting and diseases and all that stuff happening?
I don't think it's the case. Things, when we, you know, when the moon program was going on, some of these probes were landing on the moon, and then they lose power and they sit there. So there were some probes in the early 60s that landed on the moon, and you know, they had cameras and stuff. And one of the moonwalks in the late 60s, so like 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, went near one of these old probes, and they studied they got some of the equipment from these probes, and from some of the cameras they found this bacteria. And at first they thought, oh my God, there's like life on the moon here, but it was actually on the camera when it was sent up originally, and it survived, and then it was revived. So life has a way, as you know. Just watch Jurassic Park. Like, life has a way. So there's lots of things that go dormant and just can sit there for long periods of time, you know, dormant. They're not multiplying. It's cold, and then when the conditions are right, they come alive. I mean, think about like how do fruit flies appear in a completely sealed house, for example? Where do they come from? Suddenly it's warm enough and they're all over in your kitchen, right? For example, you know, like what do they do? Are they little eggs somewhere? Or, you know, that's probably maybe not the best example, but but see, on the other hand, our medicines and our technologies are much better, and people are much healthier now than they were, you know, in World War I times. People were shorter in World War I. They were much thinner, right? Food, nutrition, we didn't know as much about. The medicine was archaic compared to now. So, you know, although these things may pop up and appear, our medical systems are probably good enough to, you know, stop most of them being like, you know, knocking off 50 million people or whatever, like the 1918 flu epidemic.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. To have your view on that one. I just want to take a step back here and go back to what you were talking about, the Arctic and Greenland and the cold coming down. I think you call it the AMOC. I think that's the same as the Gulf Stream, isn't it?
Well, the AMOC is the Atlantic Meridional
Right.
Overturning
It's the
Circulation.
other one, the
Some
Gulf
people
Stream.
just say MOC, which is Meridional Overturning Circulation. The Gulf Stream is the part of that flows along the surface, basically. And in the Pacific, it's a Kuroshio current, which flows north off the east coast of Japan. That's the Pacific.
Right. So is there going to be a battle between this cold, which is coming south, and the warmth, which is going north? And is, you know, assuming that methane and the planet is getting warmer, then the warmth that is coming north will end up beating the cold, which is coming south.
Yes, and see, this causes superstorms, right? I mean, the contrast, the huge temperature difference from the warm water coming north and the cold going south, or like if it's very close proximity, the hot and cold, you get a huge pressure imbalance, and that generates enormous winds, and you get these superstorms, and you could get trains of ocean waves, maybe like Hansen was talking about it in a paper, you know, these huge boulders being lifted up from the seafloor up high, like 30, 40 feet, you know, due to these trains of waves coming repeatedly. Not as soon, think of instead of a tsunami, instead of a tidal wave, you know, one massive wave, think of just a train of waves blown by the wind of these huge storms and things. So these sort of things, you know, we've got a lot of really cool stuff, you know, in store for us coming up. If you can survive it, right, it's going to be quite a ride. So there's a lot of things are happening very, very, very quickly, very, very fast. And,
right, Paul. So can I ask you if you still secretly got your place booked on your nuclear submarine, just in case?
Yeah, I think that, well, see, we have a bunker in Ottawa called the Deefen Bunker. Like it's basically buried in bedrock, and it was supposed to be where the Canadian government would go if there was a nuclear exchange, so during the Cold War. And it was sort of decommissioned, and now it's a museum, right? So every time I go visit the museum, I try to bring like a knapsack full of tin goods and stuff, and I just stash them in a secret location in the museum. And you know, I'll just make sure I'm visiting the museum, and I'm on the inside rather than the outside when it's sealed off. I mean, several hundred people can live there, completely isolated from the air outside and stuff for several years. So
yeah, but you've got to beat that 199 other people, or 200.
Yeah, well, I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for it to go on sale, and then you know, I can be the climate advisor to the billionaires who get together and buy it, right? I have to talk my way into a spot, right?
Yeah. Or indeed a nuclear submarine, you know.
Well, yeah, I guess, you know, it's...
keep you alive for a few more years anyway. I don't know what you come up to.
I mean, you know the nuclear submarine thing, right? I mean, that was like... you know, if somebody says that you know, I won't mention any names. If somebody says that every human is going to die in 10 years, and I can demonstrate that there's some humans that can be in a cave or in a nuclear submarine and they can not die in 10 years, then that invalidates the idea that we'll be extinct in 10 years, right? So it was just, you know, it was responding to a very sort of out there concept with another very out there concept. And then people forgot the rationale for me mentioning the nuclear submarine, right? And this happens occasionally. Like actually, when I talked about the anthropogenic Arctic volcano, right, as a metaphor for putting sulfur into the Arctic to cool the Arctic, some people actually thought I meant, well, he's talking about trying to trigger a volcano in the Arctic, in Greenland or whatever. And like, it's a metaphor, right? So I have to be a bit careful with metaphors. Also, I did a video explaining what nuclear winter was, and then I got accused of trying to advocate that, you know, we drop nuclear bombs in the desert to incinerate, you know, cool the planet. And I wasn't advocating that at all. I was just saying this, hey, this is what nuclear winter is. If this technology, if these things were detonated and they put enough dust and stuff into the atmosphere, then this is what would happen, right? So it's not like I wasn't I mean, I'm advocating for carbon dioxide removal. I'm advocating for slashing fossil fuel emissions. I'm advocating for making sure we know how to cool the planet when we need to do that to preserve, food supply and water supply, right? Those are things I'm advocating for. I make it very clear when I advocate for something.
Yes, you do. You do indeed, Paul. You make it extremely clear. Actually, looking at you, you look very much like a good friend of mine here. I've just seen a
mad scientist, right?
His face in your face. Yeah, he's a bit of a climate scientist.
Well, hey, I mean, well, I have half Scottish blood, right? So. Well,
that might be it, Paul. You're one of the lucky few, because we've got a whole system for surviving up here that you don't know about, but we're just going to keep that to ourselves, We've been the great innovators, the Scots are well known for being great innovators. So we're just keeping this one quiet and pretending that we're all going to go extinct soon. It's just
well, I think it has to do with haggis and wind farms, right? And you've got lots of wind up there. It's something to do with the bagpipes as well in the kill.
It is, and as soon as you mention the bagpipes, Paul, your video goes off.
My video just went off again?
Yeah, and it just says Paul's iPhone. So I can still hear you. So maybe it'll magically come back on again.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on this time. Hey, if I was a conspiracy theory, the deep state has hacked my phone and they don't want all this stuff going out to the world, right? So
yeah, maybe that's a good point to end it, Paul, because we've had a good wee shift here, mate.
Yes, we have, and I got to save my best stuff for the next interview, right?
yeah. You've got to, yes. No, I think that was some good stuff in there, Paul. So as usual, go to Paul Beckwith's videos on YouTube. If you want to know anything about the climate system, please go to Paul Beckwith's interviews on YouTube, where he explains everything pretty comprehensively in 15 minutes exactly. I still don't quite understand why you do that, Paul. Can you tell me why you do that?
Yeah, I just, me, I'd talk for hours. I got to have some way to end it. So I just leave the option where it doesn't let me upload. And it cuts me off at 15 when I upload, right? And if I change that to unlimited, then I gotta do other stuff too, not just do videos, right? So
yeah, but you could have an alarm clock goes off, and then you could finish up what you're saying rather than just sort of.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about abrupt change. So if there's an abrupt end, you can figure out what I'm probably going to say, right? So
yeah, okay. I mean, you say most of the stuff in that 15 minutes anyway, and I'll just end off. I mean, you're not very happy with the deniers at the moment, are you?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're giving me lots of they're like cannon fodder, right? So I'm happy. Yeah, I mean, it's a serious problem that we have, right? And I knew it was serious, and it sort of hit me recently that it's a lot worse even than I thought. So yeah,
and it's a serious. Maybe we can talk about that next time, Paul. So
yes.
Once again, an absolute pleasure having you with us here on Extinction Radio / video, and we'll have you on again soon, Paul. Thanks a lot.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Paul. Bye, mate.
Okay, goodbye.
You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.
Every breath you take, every move you make, every cake you bake, every leaf you rake, Earth is watching you.